In many parts of the world today, young people are choosing not to have children, and the trend has become one of the most discussed social shifts of recent decades. Where once it was expected that adulthood would naturally lead to marriage and a family, now millions of people in their 20s and 30s are questioning, delaying, or altogether rejecting the idea of parenthood. This change is not driven by a single reason, but by a complex mix of economics, culture, personal priorities, and even uncertainty about the future of the planet. To understand why so many young people today do not have children, one has to look at the overlapping pressures shaping their lives. A central factor is economics. Raising a child has never been inexpensive, but in the modern era, the costs have risen dramatically, while wages for young workers have stagnated. Housing in cities where jobs are most available is often prohibitively expensive, forcing many to rent small apartments with little room for a family. Childcare costs can equal or exceed a person's salary, making it nearly impossible to balance work and parenting without significant financial sacrifice. Education costs, too, loom large. In some countries, parents feel obligated to save for their children's future schooling from the moment of birth, a burden that feels overwhelming when many young people are still paying off their own student loans. In such a climate, the prospect of having children seems less like a joyful step forward and more like a financial trap. The pressure is not only economic, but also cultural. Younger generations have grown up in societies where individuality, personal freedom, and career development are emphasized more strongly than family duty. Unlike past generations, who may have felt cultural or religious obligations to marry early and raise children, today's youth often prioritize self-expression, travel, experiences, and personal fulfillment. Parenthood is seen by many as a lifestyle choice rather than a social requirement, and it is one that requires significant sacrifices in terms of time, energy, and independence. For those who value autonomy, the idea of devoting decades to child rearing feels less appealing. Gender expectations also play an important role. Women in particular are increasingly aware of the inequalities and burdens that often come with motherhood. Despite progress, women in many countries still shoulder the majority of housework and childcare responsibilities, even if they are also working full-time jobs. Many young women look at their mothers' or grandmothers' experiences and see exhaustion, limited opportunities, and lives shaped more by obligation than choice. With access to education, careers, and birth control, young women today are freer to decide whether or not to become mothers, and many are choosing not to. For them, saying no to children is not a rejection of family, but an assertion of self-determination. Beyond individual choice, global uncertainty weighs heavily on young people's decisions. Climate change, political instability, and economic insecurity create a sense of unpredictability about the future. Many ask themselves, why bring a child into a world facing rising sea levels, devastating wildfires, mass migration, or looming economic collapse? For some, the ethical question is not only whether they can afford children, but whether it is responsible to have them at all in such conditions. Even those who might want children one day sometimes hesitate, hoping that global issues will improve before they commit to raising a new generation. Another significant influence is the decline of traditional institutions. Marriage rates are falling in many countries, and with them, the cultural framework that once supported early parenthood. Cohabitation, casual relationships, or simply remaining single are increasingly common, and in these contexts, having children often feels less urgent or expected. Without the strong social push toward marriage and family that existed in earlier eras, young people feel freer to imagine adult lives without children as entirely valid and fulfilling. Technology and modern lifestyles have also shifted priorities. The internet, social media, and digital entertainment provide forms of connection, community, and even fulfillment that earlier generations might have sought within family life. Pets have, in many cases, taken the place of children as companions for young adults, offering love and responsibility without the same financial or emotional burden. Work itself, too, has become more demanding. In competitive economies, career advancement requires long hours, constant mobility, and often a willingness to move to new cities or countries. Many young people feel they must choose between professional success and raising a family, and increasingly they choose the former. It is also worth noting that attitudes toward happiness and meaning have evolved. Where past generations may have viewed parenthood as the central purpose of life, many young people now see meaning in other pursuits: art, travel, activism, or self-discovery. They may acknowledge that children can bring joy, but also recognize that they can bring stress, financial strain, and limitations. By redefining fulfillment as something that can exist outside of parenthood, young people are creating new models of adulthood that do not necessarily include children. In some cases, the decision not to have children is not entirely voluntary, but reflects structural obstacles. Fertility rates are falling partly because many people delay having children until later in life due to education, career building, or lack of financial stability. By the time they feel ready, fertility issues may make it more difficult or even impossible to conceive. Others may want children but cannot find a suitable partner or do not wish to raise a child alone. Thus, declining birth rates reflect not only conscious choice, but also the realities of modern life and relationships. The phenomenon has drawn mixed reactions from society. Some worry that falling birth rates will lead to aging populations, labor shortages, and economic decline. Governments in countries such as Japan, South Korea, and parts of Europe have introduced incentives, financial rewards, housing benefits, subsidized childcare to encourage young people to have children. Yet these measures often have limited success. The deeper issues of work-life balance, gender equality, and cultural attitudes cannot be solved by cash alone. Meanwhile, defenders of the trend argue that choosing not to have children is simply a reflection of modern freedom. People now have the ability to make choices that align with their values and circumstances, rather than being forced into roles by tradition or necessity. For some, not having children allows them to live more sustainably, pursue passions, or support causes that matter to them. They argue that what matters is not the number of children people have, but whether individuals have the power to shape their own lives. Ultimately, the question of why young people today don't have children cannot be reduced to a single explanation. It is the result of economic hardship, shifting cultural values, gender equality, environmental anxiety, and evolving ideas of what it means to live a meaningful life. While some will still choose parenthood, many will not, and this choice reflects the broader transformation of society itself. Parenthood is no longer the default path, but one option among many, and young people are navigating that choice in a world far different from the one their parents or grandparents knew. In the end, the story is not simply about declining birth rates, but about human freedom and adaptation. For some, children remain the ultimate dream. For others, they are an unnecessary burden. For many, they are a maybe for the future. What unites all these perspectives is the recognition that parenthood is not inevitable, and that the choice to have or not have children is deeply personal, shaped by the challenges and possibilities of modern life.